Friday, November the 20th, 1992. The 45th wedding anniversary of Her Majesty the Queen and Prince Philip. Windsor Castle is on fire. It took 8 hours for the gallant firefighters to bring the fierce blaze under control, 15 hours to put it out completely. Mercifully, no lives were lost, and most of the castle's treasures were saved. But the damage to the northeast corner of the castle was devastating. The destruction in 6 major rooms was appalling, and St. George's Hall became a cavernous, blackened tomb. Windsor Castle is not the personal property of the Queen, so the cost of restoring this noble part of our heritage is the responsibility of the government. But to avoid further demands on the public purse, one famous state residence has come to the aid of another. Buckingham Palace, its outside so familiar, its inside for most of us wrapped in mystery. True, 40,000 people visit the palace each year, but most of these are guests at royal garden parties, and they see little of this dazzling centerpiece of our constitutional monarchy. The palace has 3 main functions. First, it is the London home of the Queen, although the royal family occupy a tiny fraction of its 650 rooms. Secondly, it is a busy and efficient administrative headquarters. And finally, the center of national hospitality, where the Queen, as head of state, is hostess to the world. And it is the state apartments, the scene of some 80 functions each year, which we are to see now for the first time. There we shall find paintings, furniture, sculpture, porcelain, and other works of art which form part of the most important private collection in the world. Buckingham House was bought by the Crown in 1762 for £28,000. But it was George IV and his great architect John Nash, over 60 years later, who created the broad sweep of rooms, each one opening into the next, which form much of the west side of the palace today. The east side, which we see from the Mall, was added in the late 1840s. Before that, London's Marble Arch stood in what today is the forecourt of the palace. To help us on our tour, we have 3 experts. On the left is Sir Geoffrey de Bellaigue, Director of the Royal Collection. In the Panama hat is Hugh Roberts, Deputy Surveyor of the Queen's Works of Art. And on the right, Christopher Lloyd, Surveyor of the Queen's Pictures. Ahead lie some 18 state rooms and galleries. Most of them are on the first floor, so we start on the curving marble steps of the grand staircase.
Well, here we are at the start of the tour of Buckingham Palace. Leaving behind the first glimpse you've had in the Grand Hall, we're about to ascend the grand staircase. This magnificent staircase is one of John Nash's masterpieces. As you can see, it's a double spread of stairs with a magnificent balustrade in gilt bronze, and above it, a whole cupola of engraved glass. It's now that you know that you're in a royal palace. And one of the clues to that is this display of portraits, which was set up by Queen Victoria shortly after her coronation in 1838. And it shows her immediate predecessors and members of her family, so that you have her grandfather, George III, and then on the right here, her mother, the Duchess of Kent, her father, the Duke of Kent, and one of her uncles, the Duke of Sussex. And over there, you have by Sir Thomas Lawrence a portrait of William IV, whom she succeeded.
balustrade cost £3,900, and that was in 1830. This is the ceremonial entrance to the state apartments. It's called the guard room, with on one side Prince Albert, and on the other side Queen Victoria, the first monarch to live in the palace as we know it today. Look upwards from time to time, or you might miss the beautiful ceilings and the chandeliers which hang from them. The motif of cream and gold was established by Edward VII in 1902. Let's look now at the first of the state rooms.
This is the Green Drawing Room. It's one of the principal rooms in the palace. In Queen Charlotte's time, it was her saloon. And in the George IV scheme of things, it was going to be the anteroom between the guard chamber and the throne room. It's once again pure Nash. And I think it's a very harmonious interior with a white and gold carving set off to advantage by the modern green silk and a splendid ceiling. George IV was a passionate collector of Sèvres porcelain. His collection ranks today as the finest in the world. A particularly rare model is this potpourri ship vase, which is dated 1758 and was purchased in the following year by Madame de Pompadour, Louis XV's mistress, who was one of the most enlightened of the factory's patrons. This ship vase stands on what is probably one of the most elaborate and colorful pieces of furniture in the royal collection. It was acquired by George IV in the 1820s, and it had been made in Paris in about 1775. This particular cabinet belonged in the 1770s to a famous operatic singer and courtesan, Marie-Joséphine Laguerre, who died at an early age of 28 after a tempestuous but very full life. There is an ostentatiousness about this cabinet which I think one can well understand somebody like her appreciating. It is rather curious to find George IV sharing these tastes.
If you were a guest at a state banquet, this is the first room you would see. Here you would be greeted by the Lord Steward and given your menu card, which also contains the seating plan for the banquet. Ahead of us now is the throne room.
The throne room is the ceremonial and symbolic center of the palace. And as befits its role, there is a sense of drama, a heightened sense of expectancy in its interior decoration, all attention being focused on the two thrones, those of the Queen and of Prince Philip. The proscenium arch, a theatrical feature with winged figures of victory holding garlands centered on a medallion with George IV's cipher.
The throne chairs were used during the coronation ceremony in 1953, although of course the crowning itself took place in the coronation chair, which remains in Westminster Abbey. The Queen and Prince Philip don't actually sit in these chairs today. Loyal addresses, for example, are received here by the Queen standing up. Photographs of several royal wedding groups have been taken in this room, so it's been the scene of happy family gatherings. In the early part of Queen Victoria's reign, state banquets were held in the picture gallery. In those days, the pictures were less well lit and displayed, and it was Queen Mary who had new lighting installed and the number of pictures reduced. So today the pictures are fewer, but of quite outstanding quality. The gallery itself is 155 feet long, almost 2.5 times the length of a cricket pitch. Before a state banquet, the guests gather here for drinks, and those to be honoured at investitures assemble here before the ceremony.
Having passed through some of the state apartments, we come now to this wonderful open space, which is the picture gallery, created by George IV for some of the finest pictures in the royal collection. And indeed today, on display here, you do have some of the best pictures in the collection. The room itself, architecturally, has not really changed since it was built. The ceiling has been altered and the doorways were altered. One architectural feature that I personally find rather interesting are the fireplaces, where you have medallion portraits in context, so to speak. At the far end, you have portraits of Titian and Leonardo da Vinci, and this end you have Dürer and Van Dyck.
There are fine paintings by Rubens. This one is called A Farm at Laeken, hanging next to Peter de Hoog's A Courtyard in Delft. Elsewhere in the picture gallery are works of other European masters: Rembrandt, Cuyp, Van Dyck, Poussin, and Teniers. In the other staterooms are works of the great British painters, Lawrence and Reynolds, and very fine examples of the American artist, Benjamin West.
There are pictures here that were collected or commissioned by Charles I in the 17th century, by Frederick, Prince of Wales in the early 18th century, by George III in the middle of the 18th century, and George IV, who straddles the late 18th and early 19th century, and of course, Queen Victoria at the end. There are major pictures collected by these most famous royal collectors on display here in the picture gallery. This painting by Rembrandt is known as The Shipbuilder and His Wife. It was painted by Rembrandt in 1633, and it was bought by George IV for 5,000 guineas, which is a huge sum of money at the beginning of the 19th century. There are very few double portraits by Rembrandt, and since this is from his early period, it is therefore immensely significant in the development of his style. What we do know is that it shows the shipbuilder Jan Rixen with his wife in his study. We're not quite sure whether he's actually designing a vessel or whether he's writing a treatise on shipbuilding.
These pictures, together with the rest of the royal collection, are held in trust by the Queen as sovereign and are regarded as part of our national heritage.
This is a portrait of King Charles I and Queen Henrietta Maria with two of their children, including the future Charles II, which was the first picture that Van Dyck painted after he was appointed court artist in 1632. It's known for obvious reasons, primarily its size, as the Great Piece. What's fascinating about the portrait is that it combines two different aspects of portraiture. You have the formality of the column and the looped curtain, but at the same time, the figures are grouped informally. This is very much a family portrait. The king and the queen are seated there with their children and with their pets. The dogs scramble up on the marvelous clothes and draperies that the queen is wearing there. And behind, in the background on the left, is the view of Westminster. And on the table are the regalia, which the king has put on one side. It's as though the formalities of the day have finished and he's sitting there enjoying the happiness of family life.
The picture gallery was designed to join the old house to the suite of rooms on the west front. Let us go on now through the silk tapestry room to enjoy some more of the outstanding works of art.
The East Gallery is roughly halfway through the tour. It's really an extension of the picture gallery. Only here, the emphasis is on Victorian pictures. This, for example, is her coronation portrait by Sir George Hayter. What he has shown is one of the highlights of the very long coronation service, where all the peers and the ladies-in-waiting are raising their hats with a jubilant shout of "God save the Queen," and you could almost hear it echoing round Westminster Abbey. There is a whole sort of sea of ermine and red robes, and those wonderful feathers in the hair that some of the ladies, Queen Victoria's own family, are wearing. But here, in this sea of people, we have the young Queen seen in profile, crowned. It's a marvelously still moment amongst all the noise of this particular occasion, very grand occasion.
From the East Gallery to the Cross Gallery, the original southern boundary of the palace. And now let's follow Christopher Lloyd by way of the West Gallery with its 4 Gobelin tapestries to the first of the majestic state rooms on the garden front.
The state dining room has another special installation of paintings, this time illustrating the development of state portraiture, culminating in 2 intriguing images of King George III and Queen Charlotte by Allan Ramsay, painted at the beginning of the 1760s. Alluring in pose, soft in colour, and amazingly sympathetic, these portraits flank a winning image by Sir Thomas Lawrence of King George IV in the robes of the Order of the Garter. Intriguingly, when Lawrence had to paint the king for his coronation portrait in 1820, he used the same pose, simply adapting the robes.
Many distinguished people below the level of head of state have dined in this room. For example, the 24 holders of the Order of Merit, the Commonwealth Prime Ministers, and in 1991, the leaders of the Group of 7 industrialized nations. Less formally, there was a performance on stage by the 3 Degrees at a family celebration. Let us go on now to one of the most beautiful rooms in the palace.
The Blue Drawing Room is the first of 3 drawing rooms on the west side of the palace, overlooking the gardens, and is one of Nash's most sumptuous and original achievements. The ceiling sparkles with white and gold and is enriched by the most wonderful and lavish sculptural reliefs up here, depicting Shakespeare, Milton, and Spenser. Among the splendid furnishings of the room are a set of 4 French tables which date from about 1820, which line the room, and which were bought by George IV, originally with Windsor in mind. They didn't in fact fit at Windsor, and so they were brought here to furnish this room. They're very, very splendidly decorated with green marble and lapis lazuli and tremendously elaborate gilt bronze mounts depicting the 4 seasons. On them are a display of blue Sèvres porcelain, and among the more original pieces here is a vase on the table over there called the Vase Royal, which has a crown on the top and a charming pastoral scene painted on the side of it. Originally, the room was red, with red walls and red columns. The blue is a later introduction and dates from this century. This is one of the most intriguing pieces of furniture in Buckingham Palace, known as the Table of the Grand Commanders. It was ordered in 1806 by Napoleon and completed in 1812, but was never delivered to him. The top is made of a single piece of Sèvres porcelain and revolves. The top is decorated in the center with Alexander the Great and 12 of the great commanders of antiquity, including Constantine, Julius Caesar, and Trajan, and with all their exploits round here and round the edge. George IV was fascinated by Napoleon and sought to buy things that had belonged to the exiled emperor. And when the restored King of France, Louis XVIII, heard that the Prince Regent was keen to acquire this table, he made him a present of it. And the Prince Regent was so absolutely delighted with it that when it arrived at Carlton House, he installed it in a prominent place and insisted that it appeared in all his state portraits thereafter.
And so to the third of the great state rooms on the garden front, the music room. 4 royal christenings have been held in this room, a font being brought from Windsor on each occasion. The Prince of Wales, the Princess Royal, the Duke of York and Prince William were all christened here by the Archbishop of Canterbury. Before state banquets, guests are presented to the Queen and to the visiting head of state here in the music room. Many other functions take place here too, including small dances with a band playing in the bow window. We move on now to perhaps the most glittering of all the state rooms, the White Drawing Room.
One of the most important pieces of French furniture in the royal collection is this roll-top desk, which was bought by George IV in 1825. It was made by the court cabinet maker Riesener. At either end, there is a slide for taking dictation. In the center of the frieze at the top, there's a telescopic reading stand. And perhaps the most intriguing feature is the locking device. A major concern, certainly in the Palace of Versailles, was the matter of keeping secrets from prying eyes. Now, this desk illustrates another attempt to prevent people from having access to secret papers. It has only one lock. If you look at the drawers in the bottom, there are no keyholes. The drawer handles are here, but they won't open. Now, if I push the roll top back to its full extent and I try again, the drawer can be opened. Below the mirror with Queen Victoria's cipher, there is one of 4 matching cabinets in the room. They're French, and they have been adapted for use in the room. This particular one has a pair of bugle candelabra of the French Empire period, and another example of 18th century Sèvres porcelain. The cabinet has an unusual and somewhat unsuspected function.
And through this secret mirror, the Queen and the royal family enter the White Drawing Room, perhaps for a reception of the diplomatic corps or a gathering of Commonwealth leaders, when all the state rooms will be in use. It will be a scene to dazzle the eye. The ladies in long dresses with sparkling diamonds and glittering tiaras, the gentlemen in formal court dress, ceremonial uniform or national costume. The palace footmen, too, will be in their full-dress state livery of scarlet and gold. From the ceilings, exquisite in themselves, the chandeliers cast a brilliant light on the harmonious elegance of each room. Flowers, many from the palace gardens, complement the delicate colors of the furnishings and the cream and gold of the walls. These are the Minister's Stairs, designed for Queen Victoria by Edward Blore in 1839. They lead us down to the Marble Hall, the very heart of the old Buckingham House. This spacious hall, clad in Italian marble, was formerly divided into apartments with windows looking out on the garden. It is perhaps ironic that John Nash, the architect of all those beautiful rooms which we've just seen, had been dismissed for extravagance. Our tour is nearly over, but one room remains. This is the Bow Room, where Privy Councillors assemble before their meetings and where new ambassadors arrive before presenting their credentials to the Queen. It's a room well known to guests at garden parties who pass through it on their way to tea in the garden. A visiting head of state, on the other hand, usually has lunch in this room on the day of his arrival. So now you have seen the state rooms, and some of the garden as well. Fitting settings, you may agree, for the Queen to entertain her guests on behalf of the nation. To Buckingham Palace and through the state apartments come kings, queens, presidents, ambassadors and diplomats, but also many other people who have made a contribution in their own way to British national life.
Please listen for your surname. When you hear your surname, continue to walk across the ballroom till you're nicely in the middle. Stop, turn to face the Queen, bow, walk forward, stop behind the stool. 1, 2, 3 down. Tap, tap, up and around to the left.
The palace is a working home, and the work of the monarchy never stops. Under the umbrella of our hereditary monarchy, we in Britain can change our government by democratic means in about 3 weeks. It is the oldest constitutional monarchy in the world, and it has the most famous address of all, Buckingham Palace.